Hello, all you nice people. Thank you for joining me again today. We are meeting every day during April for a daily dose of sanity to affirm the light when other people may be in darkness and to affirm any light within ourselves. First, to our viral acts of kindness department. Just a few hours ago, President Modi, Prime Minister Modi ordered or requested that all of India, 1.3 billion people, turn off their lights and light a candle for 9 minutes. It's a great idea. And he said, let us defeat the deep darkness of the crisis by spreading the glory of light in four directions. He also said, salute to the light of the lamp, which brings auspiciousness, health, and prosperity, which destroys negative feelings. That's a good prime minister. One of my coach graduates in India has a son who has a genetic disorder, and he depends on a certain formula which was no longer available in India as a result of the virus. And she appealed to some friends, and some people in America sent her several tins of this special formula food as an act of kindness. So, there are many acts of fear and protectionism, but simultaneously there are many acts of kindness. We're going to highlight one or two each day, and if you want to add some to the comments under the video on YouTube, please do. So let's talk today about how to put the world back together. The world seems overwhelming. It seems like there's no end to the problems. We have a virus, we have economic downturn, we have wars, we have fear. It goes on and on and on. This is nothing new. So the question is, what can one person do to make a difference? And I want to give you a great story that describes my understanding of how healing truly occurs. And the story goes that one day a man came home from work and he was quite tired and he wanted to read his newspaper. So he just sat there reading the paper. And his young boy, Johnny, came up to him and said, Daddy, would you please play with me? And Daddy did not want to play. He wanted to read the paper. So he decided he would buy himself some time. And he tore a page out of the newspaper and he tore it into 100 pieces. And it happened to be a picture of the earth. And he got some scotch tape and he gave it to the boy. He said, Johnny, go into your room and put this picture back together. And then it's a jigsaw puzzle. And then when you're done, come back and Daddy will play with you. And Johnny walks off and Daddy feels kind of smug that he bought himself some time. Well, about 10 minutes later, the boy comes back and the picture of the earth is perfectly intact. And the man says, how did you do that? It was really, I couldn't have done it in 10 minutes. And Johnny said, well, Daddy, it really was hard to do. The earth was all messed up and there were 100 little pieces and they all had tears in them and they all looked the same and I didn't see how I could possibly do it. So I turned over one of the pieces and on the other side of the piece there was a picture of a man's hand. And then turned over another piece and there was a picture of a man's foot. He says, I turned over all the pieces and it was a picture of a man. It was much easier to put one man together than to put the whole earth together. And so I taped them all together and I turned it over and somehow the earth came together as a result of putting one man together. So I love this story as a metaphor because what it's telling us is that you don't have to fix 7 billion people. You have to fix your own consciousness. So we're going to focus today not so much on action, although we'll come around to action, but we're going to focus on upgrading our own consciousness. Course in Miracles gives us some very powerful clues as to how to do this. It says, seek not to change the world, but seek instead to change your mind about the world. So what the Course is asking us to do is to change our vision. It's asking us to get our head out of problems and upsets and fears and divisions and really rise to a new kind of vision. Now, I am a student of metaphysical healing. I believe that the relationship between mind and body is extraordinary. It's exact. And I know a woman who had eye problems. She had worse and worse vision. Finally, she went to a healer, and the healer said, "Why don't you just see things as perfect instead of seeing things as error-filled?" So she practiced for a couple of weeks where she was seeing error in her husband, she decided to see him as whole. Where she was seeing error in her child, she decided to see him as whole. Where she was seeing error in her community, she decided to see it as good and well. And within a few weeks, her physical vision was literally perfect. So when she corrected her spiritual vision, she was able to make that leap to achieve material salvation. Now, I'm not saying don't deny there's a Christ and don't deny. Well, we'll come around to how to actually work with this in a minute. But the point is, what we want to do is upgrade our own vision, because when you are seeing problems, you're becoming part of the problem. You need to see a problem just enough to know what to do to change your consciousness related to it. Now, there's another section from the Course in Miracles that's challenging, but actually quite liberating. It says, it wants us to affirm, I am responsible for what I see. This is big. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, that's a tricky statement, because the ego immediately goes to, well, you're guilty for creating coronavirus, and you're the source of all the problems you see, and you're the source of your own issues. Well, only in a way. What the Course here, the first sentence is, I'm responsible for what I see. In other words, I am responsible for the vision I am using to see the world. The Course tells us that the world is neutral. And basically, it's a big screen onto which we project our beliefs, our fears, and our joys. And so the first step to healing anything outside of us is to heal what's inside of us, which is mostly our mind. And Jesus said it in his own way for his own time. He said, before you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, recognize the log in your own eye, because you can't heal somebody else as long as your vision and your own consciousness is erroneous. My teacher used to say, quit trying to pull the weeds out of somebody else's garden. You have enough weeds in your own garden, pull them, and then you'll know exactly how to pull the weeds out of other people's gardens. So let me give you a very practical example of how this works. So many years ago, I volunteered to teach yoga in a VA hospital, Veterans Hospital, and I had no idea what I was getting into. I had not seen so much suffering or sorrow at that time. I was young, and I was appalled when I went into the hospital and saw that everybody was in a wheelchair. Most of them were paralyzed, more or less. They were despairing and depressed. Their diapers smelled. The hospital was understaffed. The staff was grumpy. It was a pretty sorrowful place to be. And I got depressed just being there, teaching these people. Well, a couple of weeks went by. I was supposed to go every week and teach. And the third week, I literally forgot to go. I was so resistant to going that I literally forgot to go. And I had a little talk with myself. I said, look, Alan, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to do this. You can't mess around. Either do it or don't. And I decided that the only way that it would possibly be effective would be to go back and not be depressed and not feel sorry for these people. So I decided not to see them as decrepit, old, crippled people, but to see them as spirits, to see them as shining spirits, to see the part of them that was not physically limited, to see them part of them that was ageless. And I would treat them as whole and have fun with them. And I would be with their wholeness rather than their infirmities. Well, things changed radically. I gave them fun exercise. They could move their head and their arms, most of their legs. And I gave them breathing exercises. And I gave them meditations. And they loved it. We had so much fun. I laughed with them. I realized that a lot of them had a good sense of humor. They were sweet, loving people. I would actually give them a meditation where I said, see yourself 19 years old running on the beach. And a voice said, boy, you are so cruel, man. These people can't even get out of their wheelchair. And you tell them to see themselves running on the beach. But they loved it because there was a part of them that was bigger than their infirmity and wanted to be acknowledged as being a whole, powerful spirit. Well, the result was the classes got better and better and better. More and more people showed up. It turned out to be the most popular class in the hospital. When I arrived each week, there was a line of wheelchairs waiting down the hall to get into this room. It kind of reminded me of the last scene of Field of Dreams. All those cars were waiting to come to the baseball field. And I went on to enjoy that program immensely. I did it for 7 years until I moved away from the area. And then one of my yoga students took over and went on for years after that. But the turning point, friends, was when I shifted my vision. I could have seen them as old, poor, decrepit people, but I decided to see them as shining spirits. And when I saw them as shining spirits, it drew forth their shining spirits. And this is what I teach my life coaches. I say, when you sit with a client, do not go into agreement with all their problems. You can be aware of them, you can understand them, but go into greater agreement with their potential. And we had a section yesterday on empathy versus sympathy. And there's one more piece to empathy. Empathy is, we said that sympathy is when you go into somebody's problem with them, and empathy is when you see them with their problem, but you see them as bigger than their problem. Course in Miracles calls it true empathy. It says, do not empathize with a person's limits, but empathize only with their divinity. In other words, if you're going to see somebody, see them as magnificent and whole. And your vision is the healer. Visionaries are the true healers of this world. And if you're meeting with me each day, then I invite you to be a visionary with me. So back to healing our own consciousness. So if the world is afraid, then you have to heal your own fear. Because if you're aware of the world's fear, then there must be some fear in you. And this is where the inner work pays off, because a prerequisite to healing others is self-healing. Emerson had an amazing statement. He said, the wise man in the storm prays to God, not for safety from danger, but for deliverance from fear. So when we're in danger, it's very tempting to pray for the source of danger to go away, which of course we want it to. We want the coronavirus to go away. Everybody agrees on that. But meanwhile, there's a deeper level of healing, just to heal our own consciousness in relationship to it. I remember once I was walking through an airport in San Francisco, and airports get pretty crowded and busy. People are frazzled and hassled. And I was as well. And I remember seeing one man walking toward me. And this man, by contrast, looked so peaceful and so quiet within that immediately when I saw him, I became peaceful. And he wasn't a rabbi or a minister. He had no robes. He was just a regular guy who had a soft, peaceful, gentle look on his face. And he healed me. I mean, I wasn't particularly sick, but I was rushed and in fear, which is, I guess, a form of sickness. And just by seeing the calmness and tranquility on that man, I caught it. That was the contagious thing that needed to be contagious, that needed to be transmitted. And so what we all want to do during this period where coronavirus is a problem and it's affecting many people is we want to be that peaceful person who's affecting others more by our energy than by our words or deeds. Martin Luther King said, you have very little morally persuasive power with people who can feel your underlying contempt. And we can paraphrase that to say, you have very little healing power with people who feel your fear. Now, if you feel a fear, that's okay. We all feel it. I feel it from time to time. Okay, but get back to peace as soon as possible. And I want to close with one of my favorite quotes of all time from James Allen, who said, and this is the best teaching on holding the space, he said, two men looked out through prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars. So while we appear to be in a prison of a world where there seems to be limits and disease, there is a higher vision. We can see the mud, or we can see the stars, and when we hold our vision of the stars, we literally, practically, physically gain in our ability to lift others out of the mud and into the stars. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll meet again tomorrow. Have a very powerful lesson tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Be the light. I love you. And we'll see you again real soon.